Now let's begin. The coffee had gone cold an hour ago, but Ryan Black still gripped the mug like it was the only thing tethering him to reality. Through the kitchen window of his modest two-bedroom apartment, he watched the first snow of December settle on the fire escape. His son, 5-year-old Lucas, sat cross-legged on the living room floor, building an elaborate castle from wooden blocks with the kind of focused intensity that reminded Ryan painfully of Cecilia. 2 years. It had been 2 years since the accident took her, and Ryan could still hear the police officer's voice on the phone, still feel the way his legs had given out in the hospital corridor. Brain hemorrhage. Instant. The drunk driver who'd run the red light walked away with scratches. Cecilia, brilliant and fierce Cecilia, never woke up. The doorbell's harsh buzz shattered his reverie. Lucas looked up, eyes wide. Those were Cecilia's eyes, green as spring grass. Is it Grandma? Ryan's jaw tightened. Probably, buddy. Keep building. I'll handle it. Through the peephole, he saw her, Marcia Cunningham, draped in a camel hair coat that cost more than his monthly rent, her silver hair swept into a perfect chignon. Behind her stood her husband Samuel, distinguished and cold in his tailored suit, and their son Dan, Cecilia's younger brother, wearing the same entitled smirk he'd perfected in prep school. Ryan opened the door, but didn't step aside. Marcia. Samuel. Dan. This is unexpected. Is it? Marcia's voice dripped condescension as she pushed past him into the apartment, her gaze sweeping the space with barely concealed disdain. We've been calling for 3 days, Ryan. 3 days. I've been busy. Work deadlines. Ryan closed the door, positioning himself between them and Lucas, who'd abandoned his blocks and retreated to the couch, clutching his favorite stuffed elephant. Samuel's expression was granite. We need to discuss Lucas's future. His future is here. With me. Dan laughed, the sound ugly. In this shoebox? Come on, man. Look at this place. Lucas deserves better than discount furniture and a view of a dumpster. Ryan's hands clenched, but his voice remained level. He has everything he needs. Love. Stability. Attention. He has a father who works 16-hour days at a second-rate architectural firm. Marcia moved to the couch, extending her arms toward Lucas. Sweetheart, say hello to Grandma. Lucas pressed himself against the cushions, elephant held tight. Hi. The rejection flickered across Marcia's face before her expression hardened. She turned to Ryan. This is exactly what we're talking about. The boy is withdrawn. Anxious. He needs proper care, proper education, proper opportunities. Things you simply cannot provide. I provide plenty. Ryan's voice edged toward steel. And he's not withdrawn. He's cautious around people who make him uncomfortable. Samuel stepped forward, his presence imposing. Let's speak plainly. Cecilia came from a world you never truly belonged to, Ryan. We tolerated the marriage because she loved you, but she's gone now. You're struggling, don't bother denying it. That car you drive is 12 years old. This apartment is in a C-grade school district. You can barely afford his daycare. I manage just fine. Do you? Dan pulled out his phone, scrolling. You've been late picking him up from daycare 7 times in the past month. You forgot his school play last week. His teacher called us, Ryan. Us. Because she couldn't reach you. The guilt hit like a fist. Ryan had been drowning in the Mercer Tower project, working nights to perfect the designs that might finally earn him a promotion. He'd forgotten the play. Mrs. Patterson had sent 3 emails. One mistake. It's not one mistake. Marcia's voice sharpened. It's a pattern. You're overwhelmed, and Lucas is suffering for it. We can give him everything. The best schools, summer in the Hamptons, college already secured. A life Cecilia would have wanted for him. Cecilia wanted him with me. Cecilia never imagined you'd be raising him alone in poverty. Samuel pulled a folder from his briefcase. We've consulted with our attorneys. Given the circumstances, your financial instability, your work schedule, Lucas's clear need for a more structured environment, we have grounds for a custody petition. The world tilted. You can't be serious. We've never been more serious. Marcia's eyes glittered. We're filing tomorrow. You can fight this, spend money you don't have on lawyers you can't afford, drag this through courts for years while Lucas suffers through the uncertainty. Or you can be reasonable, Dan interrupted. Sign custody over to Mom and Dad. We'll make it worth your while. Visitation rights, obviously. Summers, maybe. But Lucas needs to be with family who can actually take care of him. Ryan looked at his son, small and scared on the couch. and felt something crack inside his chest. Then he looked back at the Cunninghams, at their expensive clothes and presumptuous certainty, at the way they'd invaded his home and his life, and felt something else entirely, a cold, clarifying fury. Get out. Marcia's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose. Excuse me. You heard me. Get out of my home. If you want to file your petition, file it. But you don't get to stand here and threaten me while my son listens. We're not threatening. Samuel's voice was ice. We're offering you a graceful exit. But if you insist on fighting this, Ryan, you will lose. We have resources, connections, the best legal team in the state. You have what? Pride? Love? Neither pays for a competent defense. Out. Now. For a moment, no one moved. Then Marcia smiled, the expression predatory. We'll see you in court, Ryan. And when we do, just remember, we gave you a chance. They left in a cloud of expensive perfume and veiled threats. Ryan locked the door and leaned against it, breathing hard. Lucas appeared at his elbow, elephant dragging on the floor. Are they taking me away, Daddy? Ryan knelt, pulling his son into a fierce embrace. No, buddy. No. I promise you, that's not going to happen. But even as he said it, doubt gnawed at him. The Cunninghams weren't bluffing. They had money, power, connections that reached into every corner of the city's elite circles. He had late rent notices and a car that barely started in winter. His phone buzzed. A text from Alan Simpson, his best friend since college. Heard the Cunninghams paid you a visit. We need to talk. Tomorrow. Coffee. Ryan closed his eyes. In a city of 8 million people, news traveled fast in certain circles. Alan worked in financial forensics, had contacts everywhere. If he'd heard about the custody threat, it meant the Cunninghams were already moving pieces on the board. Daddy. Lucas's small voice pulled him back. Can we finish the castle? Ryan managed to smile. Yeah, buddy. Let's finish the castle. They built together until Lucas's bedtime, and Ryan read 3 chapters of Charlotte's Web until his son's breathing deepened into sleep. Then he sat at the kitchen table, staring at his laptop, searching for family law attorneys he couldn't afford. Around midnight, his phone rang. The caller ID showed a number he didn't recognize. Mr. Black? This is Jonathan Cameron. I'm a family law attorney. I believe we should meet. Tomorrow morning, if possible. I haven't hired anyone yet. How did you? A mutual friend suggested I contact you. Alan Simpson. He's quite insistent that I take your case. Ryan's mind raced. I can't afford. We'll discuss terms tomorrow. I've reviewed the preliminary information Alan provided. Mr. Black, this case is, let's say it presents certain opportunities for creative legal strategy. I'd like to help. 9 a.m. my office. Ryan found himself agreeing, though every instinct screamed that this was too convenient, too easy. Nothing in his life had been easy since Cecilia died. After hanging up, he pulled up Jonathan Cameron's credentials. Harvard Law, 15 years specializing in family court, an impressive win record, and a reputation for taking on powerful opponents. The retainer alone would probably drain his savings. But what choice did he have? Ryan opened his laptop and began documenting everything. Every late pickup, every missed call, every interaction with the Cunninghams. If they wanted a war, he'd give them one, even if it destroyed him in the process. Jonathan Cameron's office occupied the 20th floor of a sleek glass tower in Midtown, all clean lines and understated wealth. The receptionist, efficient and polite, led Ryan to a conference room where a man in his mid-40s sat reviewing files, his dark hair graying at the temples, reading glasses perched on his nose. Mr. Black. Cameron stood, extending his hand. His grip was firm, assessing. Thank you for coming. Please sit. Coffee. I'm fine. Ryan settled into the leather chair, acutely aware of his worn jacket compared to Cameron's bespoke suit. Your call last night was unexpected. Alan Simpson is persuasive when he believes in something. Cameron tapped a folder on the table. He's provided me with some interesting background on the Cunningham family. Old money, political connections, philanthropic facade. Also, if one digs deep enough, several interesting skeletons. Ryan leaned forward. What kind of skeletons? We'll get to that. First, let's talk about your position. The Cunninghams filed their petition this morning. They're moving fast, which suggests they want to catch you off balance. They're claiming financial instability, inadequate living conditions, and neglect. Neglect? Ryan's voice rose. I've never neglected Lucas. I made mistakes, yes, but I know. Cameron's tone was calm, grounding. I've seen the documentation you emailed last night. Quite thorough. But in family court, perception often trumps reality. The Cunninghams will paint a picture of a struggling single father in over his head. They'll bring character witnesses, expert testimony on child development, evidence of their superior resources. They'll make it seem like taking Lucas is an act of love, not control. So I'm already lost. Not even close. Cameron removed his glasses, meeting Ryan's eyes directly. But you need to understand what you're facing. This won't be a fight you can win by proving you're a good father. You need to prove they're bad grandparents. Or better yet, unfit guardians. They've never hurt Lucas. Not physically, perhaps. But control is its own form of abuse. Alan mentioned that Cecilia had a complicated relationship with her family. Care to elaborate? Ryan sat back, memories flooding through him. Cecilia cut contact with them for 3 years before we got married. She said they were suffocating, that everything was about appearances and legacy. When she told them she was dating me, an architect from Queens whose father drove a taxi, they lost it. Threatened to cut her off, disown her. She didn't care. We eloped. But they reconciled. After Lucas was born, Cecilia thought. Ryan's throat tightened. She thought becoming grandparents would change them. And it did, sort of. They doted on Lucas, sent expensive gifts. But there were always conditions. Always this underlying message that I wasn't good enough, that Lucas deserved better than what I could provide. And after Cecilia died, they became worse. More controlling. Marcia wanted Lucas every weekend. Samuel started talking about private schools, trust funds. Dan would make these comments about how Lucas should live with real family. I pushed back, and they backed off for a while. But they never stopped circling. Cameron made notes, his expression thoughtful. Here's what I propose. We don't fight their narrative head-on. We let them build their case, expose their hand. Meanwhile, we build ours. Not about you being perfect, but about them being dangerous. Dangerous how? That's what we need to uncover. Alan's already started digging into their financial records, their social connections, their history. Old families like the Cunninghams always have secrets, Mr. Black. We just need to find the right ones. And if we don't, Cameron's smile was sharp. Then we create leverage another way. But I don't think it'll come to that. Tell me about the accident. The one that killed Cecilia. Ryan's hands clenched. Drunk driver. Guy named Marcus Webb, 32, insurance adjuster. He ran a red light at the intersection of 5th and Broadway. Hit Cecilia's car on the driver's side. She died at the scene. And Webb pleaded guilty to vehicular manslaughter. Got 6 years, served 3. He's out now. Did the Cunninghams attend the trial? Every day? Samuel made a statement at sentencing. It was. Ryan paused, remembering. It was strange. He barely mentioned Cecilia. Kept talking about Lucas, about the grandson who'd never know his mother, about justice and punishment. It felt performative. Cameron's pen stilled. Interesting. And after the trial? They withdrew. Sent money for Lucas's college fund, called occasionally. I thought they were grieving in their own way. Then 3 months ago, Marcia started pushing for more time with Lucas. Became insistent. That's when things escalated. 3 months ago. Cameron noted something. What else changed 3 months ago? Ryan thought back. I got promoted. Junior architect to senior. Better pay, better hours eventually. I thought it would help, prove I could provide stability. Or it threatened them. Cameron leaned back. If you're stable and successful, their entire argument collapses. They needed to move before you got your footing. The realization hit, like cold water. They were waiting for me to fail. And when you didn't, they decided to force the issue. Cameron gathered his files. Mr. Black, Ryan, I'm going to be honest with you. This case is going to get ugly. The Cunninghams will attack your character, your parenting, every choice you've made since Cecilia died. They'll try to break you publicly and privately. Are you prepared for that? Ryan thought of Lucas, sleeping peacefully with his stuffed elephant. Thought of Cecilia's laugh, her fierce love for their son. Thought of the Cunninghams' smug certainty that money and power trumped everything. Yes. Good. Because here's my strategy. We're going to let them think they're winning. We'll fight enough to seem legitimate, but we won't reveal our real ammunition until the final hearing. We want them confident, overconfident. And when they think they've won, that's when we strike. What ammunition? Cameron smiled. That's what the next few weeks are about. Discovery, investigation, building our case. But I need your complete trust and cooperation. No matter how bad things look, no matter how much pressure they apply, you follow my lead. Can you do that? Ryan extended his hand. What's your retainer? Alan's handling it. Consider it a favor between old friends. He and I go back to law school. You can repay me when this is over. Now let's talk about what happens next. They spent the next 2 hours strategizing, Cameron outlining the legal process, while taking detailed notes about every interaction Ryan had ever had with the Cunninghams. When Ryan finally left, the winter sun was high and pale, and for the first time since Marcia's visit, he felt something other than despair. He felt ready to fight. The preliminary hearing was set for 3 weeks later, in a windowless courtroom that smelled of old wood and stale coffee. Ryan sat beside Jonathan Cameron at the defendant's table, watching the Cunninghams sweep in like visiting royalty. Marcia wore pearls and an expression of wounded dignity. Samuel's face was carved granite. Dan lounged in the gallery, scrolling through his phone with theatrical boredom. Their attorney, Edmund Durham, was a silver-haired shark in a $3,000 suit, known for winning custody cases for Manhattan's elite. He greeted Judge Patricia Morrison with easy familiarity. They'd probably encountered each other at the same country clubs and charity galas. This is a preliminary hearing to establish the grounds for the Cunningham petition. Judge Morrison began, her voice crisp and no nonsense. Mr. Durham, you may proceed. Durham stood, commanding the room effortlessly. Thank you, Your Honor. This case is fundamentally about a child's welfare. Lucas Black, age 5, currently resides with his father Ryan Black in substandard housing, attends a mediocre daycare, and has experienced documented neglect due to his father's work commitments and financial struggles. He presented photographs of Ryan's apartment, the cramped rooms, the aging appliances, the neighborhood. Then came the daycare reports, the missed calls, the forgotten school play, all presented with devastating efficiency. In contrast, my clients can provide Lucas with every advantage: a stable home in a safe neighborhood, private education, cultural enrichment, and most importantly, time and attention from caregivers who aren't working 16-hour days. Ryan watched the judge's expression, trying to read her reaction. She was listening, taking notes, revealing nothing. When Durham finished, Cameron stood. Your Honor, this petition is built on sand. Yes, Ryan Black works hard, as does every parent trying to provide for their child. Yes, he lives modestly, but his home is clean, safe, and filled with love. What Mr. Durham presents as neglect is simply the reality of single parenthood. And what the Cunninghams present as generosity is actually a power play designed to control their grandson the way they once controlled their daughter. That's slander. Marcia gasped from the gallery. Judge Morrison's gavel cracked. Mrs. Cunningham, you will remain silent or leave my courtroom. Mr. Cameron, do you have evidence to support this claim? We're gathering it, Your Honor. Discovery is ongoing. But I would ask the court to consider motive. Why, after 2 years of minimal involvement, are the Cunninghams suddenly demanding full custody? What changed? Durham objected, but Cameron had planted the seed. The hearing continued for another hour, both sides presenting their preliminary cases. When it ended, Judge Morrison scheduled a full custody trial for 6 weeks out and granted temporary joint custody. Lucas would spend weekdays with Ryan, weekends with the Cunninghams. Unacceptable, Samuel muttered as they left the courtroom. Ryan watched them huddle with Durham in the hallway, saw the way Dan gesticulated angrily. Cameron touched his arm. That went well. How is losing weekends with my son well? Because now they have unsupervised access, which means they'll get comfortable, make mistakes. Trust me, over the next 4 weeks, Ryan lived in a special kind of hell. Every Friday evening, Marcia and Samuel's driver would collect Lucas, who'd leave clutching his elephant and looking back at Ryan with uncertain eyes. Every Sunday night, Lucas would return exhausted and distant, full of stories about the Cunningham's mansion, the toys they bought him, the places they'd taken him. Grandma says you work too much, Lucas said one Sunday, picking at his dinner. She says if I lived with them, I could have my own room with a TV and everything. Ryan set down his fork carefully. Do you want that, buddy? To live with Grandma and Grandpa? Lucas's lower lip trembled. I want you and Grandma. Why can't I have both? You do have both. I'm just trying to figure out the best way. But Lucas didn't understand, and Ryan couldn't explain without vilifying the Cunninghams, something Cameron had warned against. Let them be the villains, he'd said. You be the hero. Meanwhile, Alan had been busy. He appeared at Ryan's apartment one Wednesday night carrying a laptop and wearing the expression of a man who'd struck gold. "I found something." Ryan closed the door behind him. "What?" "The Cunningham's Foundation. They run this big charitable organization, right? The Cecilia Cunningham Memorial Foundation, established after your wife died. Very public, very prestigious. They've raised millions for children's education. I know about the foundation. What about it?" Alan opened his laptop, pulling up spreadsheets. "Your friend Alan here has connections in the IRS. And those connections can sometimes access certain financial records. The foundation? It's a shell game. Money goes in from donors, but it doesn't go where it's supposed to. They're funneling funds to offshore accounts, probably for tax evasion. And the real kicker? Some of that money is marked as Lucas Black Educational Trust, but it's not in any legitimate trust. It's just sitting in Samuel's personal account." Ryan stared at the numbers, his mind racing. "They're stealing from a charity named after their own daughter? And using your son's name to do it. This is federal fraud, Ryan. We're talking serious prison time if it comes out." "Then why hasn't it come out?" "Because they're careful. The foundation's books are technically clean on the surface. You'd need to dig deep, cross-reference multiple accounts, have access to banking records that most people can't get. But I can get them, and Jonathan can use them." Ryan felt a cold satisfaction spreading through his chest. "This is it. This is what we use." "Not yet." Alan closed the laptop. "Jonathan's building something bigger. This is leverage, insurance. But the main strategy is different. He wants them to bury themselves." "How?" "Wait and see. Just trust the process." The trial began on a Tuesday morning in late January, the courthouse steps slick with ice. Ryan arrived early, dressed in his best suit, still not as expensive as the Cunningham's attire, but presentable. Jonathan Cameron met him in the hallway, briefcase in hand, expression calm. "Ready? As I'll ever be. Remember, no outbursts, no matter what they say. Let me handle everything." The courtroom filled quickly. Judge Morrison presided, her gray hair pulled back severely, her reading glasses perched on her nose. The Cunninghams sat with Edmund Durham at the plaintiff's table, Marcia dabbing at her eyes with a lace handkerchief, Samuel's jaw set in righteous determination. Durham's opening statement was a masterpiece of manipulation. He painted the Cunninghams as grieving grandparents desperately trying to save their grandson from a father drowning in poverty and despair. He brought witnesses, the daycare director who testified about the late pickups, a child psychologist who'd never met Lucas but opined about the effects of instability, neighbors who'd heard Ryan shouting in frustration during a particularly difficult bedtime routine. Each testimony chipped away at Ryan's composure. He wanted to scream, to defend himself, but Cameron's hand on his arm kept him anchored. When it was the defense's turn, Cameron took a different approach. He called Lucas's kindergarten teacher, Mrs. Patterson, who testified that Lucas was bright, well-adjusted, and clearly loved. He brought in Ryan's supervisor from work, who explained that the long hours were temporary, part of a major project that had since concluded. He presented financial records showing Ryan's steady employment and improving circumstances. But the most devastating moment came when Cameron called Allison Blanchard, Cecilia's college roommate and closest friend. "Ms. Blanchard, how long did you know Cecilia Cunningham Black?" 8 years. We met freshman year at Columbia and stayed close until her death. And during that time, did she ever discuss her relationship with her family? Allison's gaze drifted to the Cunninghams, her expression hardening. Frequently. Cecilia loved her parents, but they suffocated her. Everything was about control, who she dated, what she studied, where she worked. When she fell in love with Ryan, they threatened to disown her unless she ended the relationship. Objection. Durham shot to his feet. "This is hearsay and irrelevant." Overruled, Judge Morrison said. "It speaks to the family dynamic." "Continue, Ms. Blanchard." Cecilia chose Ryan. It broke her heart to be cut off from her family, but she said being with him was like breathing after being underwater her whole life. When Lucas was born and the Cunninghams wanted back in, she was terrified. She made Ryan promise, made him swear, that if anything ever happened to her, he wouldn't let them control Lucas the way they'd controlled her. Ryan's eyes burned. He remembered that conversation, late one night, when Cecilia was 8 months pregnant, her hand on her belly and fear in her eyes. "Promise me," she'd whispered. "Don't let them make him into something he's not." Marcia stood abruptly. Lies. Cecilia loved us. She. Judge Morrison's gavel cracked. Mrs. Cunningham, sit down immediately or be removed from this courtroom. Samuel pulled his wife back into her seat, but the damage was done. The jury. No. The judge, this was a bench trial, had seen their composure crack. The trial stretched across 3 days, each side presenting evidence and counter-evidence, building competing narratives. Durham painted Ryan as unstable and inadequate. Cameron painted the Cunninghams as controlling manipulators. On the third day, during cross-examination, Durham made his move. Mr. Black, isn't it true that you've missed multiple meetings with Lucas's pediatrician? Ryan hesitated. He'd rescheduled twice due to work conflicts. I rescheduled them, yes. And isn't it true that Lucas has expressed a desire to spend more time at his grandparents' home? He's 5. He likes the toys they buy him. So you admit he's happier there? That's not what I said. Durham paced, performative. Mr. Black, let me ask you directly. If you truly loved your son, wouldn't you want what's best for him, regardless of your own desires? The courtroom went silent. Ryan looked at Lucas in the gallery. Alan was watching him, having taken a day off to babysit. His son waved, oblivious to the gravity of the moment. I do want what's best for him, Ryan said quietly. That's why I'm fighting this. But he could see the doubt in Judge Morrison's eyes, the way she was weighing his words against the Cunninghams' resources. Money talked, even in courtrooms that pretended it didn't. That night, Ryan sat with Jonathan Cameron in a bar near the courthouse, nursing a whiskey he couldn't afford. I'm losing, aren't I? Cameron swirled his scotch. The optics aren't great. That's it. That's all you have to say. Ryan, look at me. Cameron's voice was firm. Trust the process. Everything is proceeding exactly as planned. Planned? They're destroying me up there. They're overconfident. Durham is playing all his cards because he thinks he's already won. Which means when we reveal ours, the impact will be catastrophic. What cards? The foundation fraud? The financial records? Something better. Cameron finished his drink. Tomorrow, I'm calling a witness they don't expect. Someone who will change everything. But I need you to do something for me. What? I need you to consider agreeing to their terms. Ryan nearly dropped his glass. What? Hear me out. We're going to let them think they've won. You're going to tell me, on record, that you're willing to sign over custody to avoid a prolonged battle that could hurt Lucas. Absolutely not. Ryan. No. I'm not giving up my son to those people. I don't care what strategy you've cooked up. I won't do it. Cameron leaned forward, his voice low and intense. What if I told you that by appearing to give up, you guarantee Lucas stays with you forever? What if I told you that the papers they'll have you sign contain provisions they won't discover until it's too late? What if I told you that page 47 of those documents will destroy them completely? Ryan's breath caught. What's on page 47? A clause that triggers an investigation into the Cecilia Cunningham Memorial Foundation. Once you sign, accepting their conditions, they become legally liable for every fraudulent transaction, every offshore account, every dollar they've stolen in your son's name. The agreement stipulates that in exchange for custody, they establish a legitimate trust for Lucas, one that requires full financial disclosure and IRS audit. They won't read the fine print. Durham will skim it, see that they got what they wanted, and advise them to sign. And the moment they do, federal investigators get everything Allen's uncovered. Ryan sat back, his mind reeling. You're setting a trap. A legal one. Everything by the book. But it requires you to look defeated, to seem like you're giving up. Can you do that? Can you trust me enough to let them think they've won? Ryan thought about Cecilia, about her fear of her parents' control. Thought about Lucas, innocent and caught in the middle. Thought about Jonathan Cameron's calm certainty and Alan Simpson's midnight research sessions. What happens to Lucas during all this? The custody agreement has a 30-day waiting period for finalization. During that time, discovery of the fraud triggers an emergency review. The Cunninghams will be deemed unfit based on criminal activity. Custody reverts to you permanently, and they'll face federal charges. But it only works if they believe they've won so completely that they don't scrutinize the paperwork. It was insane, risky, required trust in a system Ryan had little faith in. But looking at Cameron's steady gaze, at the careful planning behind every move, Ryan realized he didn't have to have faith in the system. He just needed faith in this attorney who'd taken his case without payment, who'd worked around the clock to build an impossible strategy. Okay, Ryan said. I'll do it. Cameron smiled. Then let's finish this. The next morning, Cameron called his surprise witness, Dr. Miriam Thompson, a forensic psychologist who specialized in family dynamics and child welfare. Dr. Thompson, you've reviewed the materials in this case. What's your professional opinion regarding Lucas Black's placement? Dr. Thompson, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and steel in her voice, didn't hesitate. Lucas Black is a well-adjusted child with a secure attachment to his father. Removing him from that primary attachment figure would be psychologically damaging, regardless of material benefits offered by alternative caregivers. And what about the Cunninghams' claims of neglect? The evidence suggests mistakes typical of any working parent, not a pattern of neglect. What concerns me more is the pattern of behavior exhibited by the Cunninghams, the pressure tactics, the use of resources to intimidate, the apparent belief that wealth supersedes emotional bonds. These suggest a controlling dynamic that could be harmful to the child's development. Durham objected repeatedly, but Dr. Thompson's credentials were impeccable. Her testimony carried weight. After she stepped down, Cameron approached the bench. Your Honor, my client would like to make a statement. Judge Morrison looked surprised. Mr. Black, you wish to address the court? Ryan stood, his heart hammering. This was the performance of his life. Your Honor, I've listened to everything said here over the past 3 days. I've heard about my inadequacies, my mistakes, my limitations. And the truth is, I'm tired. Jonathan touched his arm in what looked like comfort, but was actually encouragement. Ryan continued. I'm tired of fighting. Tired of watching my son be torn between two worlds. The Cunninghams can offer Lucas opportunities one never could. Maybe they're right. Maybe he deserves better than what I can provide. Marcia's sharp intake of breath was audible. Samuel leaned forward, triumph flickering across his face. I'm prepared to discuss terms, Ryan said, his voice breaking just enough to sound genuine. For Lucas's sake. I don't want him to suffer through more of this. If there's a way to settle this that guarantees his welfare and my continued involvement in his life, I'm willing to consider it. Judge Morrison's expression softened. Mr. Black, I appreciate your willingness to put your son first. Mr. Durham, Mr. Cameron, I suggest you work out an agreement. We'll reconvene in 1 week to review the terms. As they filed out of the courtroom, Ryan felt Edmund Durham's assessing gaze. He kept his shoulders slumped, his expression defeated. In the hallway, Samuel approached. That was the right decision, Ryan. We'll make sure Lucas has everything. I just want him happy, Ryan said quietly. He will be. Marcia's voice was gentle now, victorious. You'll see. This is for the best. They left in a cloud of satisfaction, already planning their victory. Ryan waited until they were gone before straightening, meeting Cameron's eyes. Now we wait, Cameron said. Durham will draft the agreement. It'll be 50 pages of legalese establishing custody, visitation, financial arrangements. And buried in there, on page 47, will be the clause that ends them. And if they notice? They won't. Durham's good, but he's arrogant. He sees you as beaten. This is a formality. He'll skim it, make sure his clients get custody, and miss the trap entirely. Over the next week, Ryan played his part perfectly. He met with Durham and Cameron to discuss terms, negotiating minor points about visitation while appearing resigned to the major ones. He agreed to weekend visits, summer custody, holiday rotations, all temporary, if Cameron's plan worked. Lucas sensed something was wrong. Are you sad, Daddy? Ryan hugged him tight. Just tired, buddy. But everything's going to be okay. I promise. The final hearing was scheduled for the following Tuesday. Ryan spent the weekend with Lucas, memorizing his laugh, the way he smelled like syrup and soap, the endless questions about why the sky was blue and where dreams came from. On Monday night, Jonathan Cameron called. It's done. The agreement is drafted. Durham sent it over this afternoon. Page 47 is intact. They took the bait. And the investigation? Triggered the moment they sign. Federal agents are already briefed. Allen's evidence is documented and ready. By the time the Cunninghams realize what they've agreed to, it'll be too late. Ryan exhaled slowly. What if something goes wrong? Then we fight it another way. But Ryan, nothing's going to go wrong. Trust me. Tuesday dawned cold and clear. Ryan dressed carefully, kissed Lucas goodbye. Allen was watching him again, and headed to the courthouse. His hands shook as he pushed through the heavy doors. The courtroom was nearly empty. Just Ryan and Cameron at one table, the Cunninghams and Durham at another, Judge Morrison on the bench. A clerk sat ready to record everything. "We're here to formalize the custody agreement between Ryan Black and Samuel and Marcia Cunningham," Judge Morrison began. "Gentlemen, are both parties satisfied with the terms?" "We are, Your Honor," Durham said smoothly. Cameron nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Black, you understand that by signing this agreement, you're ceding primary custody of your son Lucas to his grandparents, with visitation rights as outlined in the document." Ryan's throat was dry. "I understand. And you're doing this voluntarily, without coercion?" "Yes, Your Honor." Marcia was crying softly, tears of joy. Samuel's hand covered hers, his expression solemn with victory. Dan, in the gallery, was actually smiling. Judge Morrison produced the document, a thick stack of paper bound in blue covers. "Let's review the key points before we sign." She went through it methodically: custody arrangements, financial responsibilities, visitation schedules, education decisions. Ryan listened with half an ear, watching the Cunningham's attorney skim through his copy with obvious satisfaction. They reached page 47. "Now, this section is interesting," Judge Morrison said, her reading glasses sliding down her nose. "It establishes a legitimate educational trust for the minor child, requiring full financial disclosure from the custodial guardians. It also mandates a complete audit of any existing foundations or trusts bearing the child's name." "Mr. Cunningham, Mrs. Cunningham, did you review this section?" Marcia blinked. "Ah, yes, of course. It's just ensuring Lucas's financial security." "Indeed." Judge Morrison's gaze was sharp. "It's quite comprehensive. It requires you to provide documentation of all accounts, investments, and charitable organizations connected to Lucas Black within 30 days of signing. Failure to comply results in immediate custody reversal and potential legal action." "Did Mr. Durham explain this to you?" Durham's face had gone pale. He was flipping through his copy frantically, reaching page 47, his eyes widening as he read the actual language. "Your Honor, I need a moment to consult with my clients." "Too late for that, Mr. Durham. We're here to sign or decline. Which is it?" Samuel's voice was ice. "What exactly are we signing?" Cameron stood, his voice calm and professional. "You're signing an agreement that establishes legitimate financial oversight for Lucas's future. Given that the Cecilia Cunningham Memorial Foundation has raised significant funds ostensibly for his benefit, it seems reasonable to ensure those funds are properly managed. Unless there's a reason you'd object to transparency." The trap was sprung. Ryan watched it happen in slow motion, the realization dawning on Samuel's face, the fury building in Marcia's eyes, Durham's stuttering attempts to salvage the situation. "This is entrapment," Samuel roared. "You've manipulated the language." "I've done nothing of the sort," Cameron said calmly. "Every clause was clearly stated in the document your attorney reviewed and approved. If you're uncomfortable with financial transparency, perhaps we should examine why." Judge Morrison's gavel cracked. "Mr. Cunningham, control yourself. Mr. Durham, does your client wish to sign this agreement or not?" Durham was sweating. "Your Honor, we need time to review. You've had a week." Mr. Black showed good faith by agreeing to your terms. If you're now refusing to show the same good faith regarding your grandson's financial interests, that tells me something important about your motivations here." Ryan watched Marcia lean toward Durham, hissing something. Durham shook his head frantically. Samuel's jaw was clenched so tight it looked painful. "We need to withdraw the petition," Durham said finally. "Pending further review." "Withdrawn." Judge Morrison's eyebrows rose. "Mr. Durham, you've spent 3 weeks arguing that your clients are the only suitable guardians for this child. Now you're withdrawing because you object to financial oversight? That's concerning." "Your Honor, I'm not finished." Judge Morrison removed her glasses. "Mr. Cameron, you mentioned the Cecilia Cunningham Memorial Foundation. Is there something about this organization that the court should know?" Cameron approached the bench, carrying a folder. "Your Honor, if I may submit documentation obtained through legal discovery. It appears the foundation has engaged in financial improprieties that may constitute fraud. My client's son's name has been used to solicit donations that were never properly allocated." He handed the folder to the judge. Ryan watched her read, saw her expression harden with each page. "Mr. Cunningham, Mrs. Cunningham, you'll remain seated." Judge Morrison's voice could have frozen water. Bailiff, please contact the U.S. Attorney's Office. I believe they'll want to review these documents. This is outrageous. Marcia stood, her carefully composed mask shattering. You can't do this. We have rights. You have the right to remain silent, Judge Morrison said coldly. I strongly suggest you exercise it. As for this custody petition, I'm dismissing it with prejudice. Furthermore, I'm issuing a restraining order. Mr. and Mrs. Cunningham, you are not to contact Lucas Black or approach within 500 feet of him pending resolution of these allegations. Any violation will result in immediate arrest. The courtroom exploded. Durham was objecting, Marcia was crying, Samuel was shouting. Dan had his phone out, already calling someone, probably the family's crisis management team. Through it all, Ryan sat perfectly still, watching his careful plan unfold exactly as Jonathan Cameron had promised. Judge Morrison's gavel cracked repeatedly until order was restored. Mr. Black, full custody of your son is reinstated. The court apologizes for the distress this proceeding has caused you and Lucas. You're free to go. Ryan stood on shaking legs. Thank you, Your Honor. As he turned to leave, he locked eyes with Samuel Cunningham. The older man's face was purple with rage and something else, fear. Good. Let him be afraid. Let them all understand what it felt like to have control ripped away. In the hallway, Jonathan Cameron stopped him. Don't celebrate yet. The investigation will take months. They'll throw lawyers at it, try to bury the evidence. But Alan's documentation is solid. They're going to face consequences. What about Lucas? They can't come near him. Not until the restraining order is lifted, which won't happen until the criminal case is resolved. You're safe, Ryan. You both are. Ryan felt the weight of 3 weeks of terror lift from his shoulders. I don't know how to thank you. Win your son's love. Be the father Cecilia knew you could be. That's thanks enough. Cameron shook his hand. Now go home to Lucas. He's been without you long enough. Ryan practically ran from the courthouse, calling Alan as he went. It worked. It actually worked. I never doubted it for a second, Alan lied cheerfully. Lucas is making pancakes. Well, he's cracking eggs on the floor while I make pancakes. Get home. Ryan caught a cab, too impatient for the subway. As the city blurred past, he thought about Cecilia, about the promise he'd made to protect their son from her family's control. He'd kept that promise. Against all odds, against money and power and institutional advantage, he'd kept it. When he burst through his apartment door, Lucas looked up from the floor where he was indeed surrounded by eggshells and flour. Daddy, you're home. We're making breakfast for dinner. Ryan scooped his son into his arms, holding him tight enough that Lucas squeaked. We can make anything you want, buddy. Anything at all. Over Lucas's head, Alan raised his coffee mug in a silent toast. Ryan nodded back, blinking away tears. They'd won. The next 6 months unfolded like a fever dream. The restraining order held, keeping the Cunninghams at bay while federal investigators tore through the Foundation's records. The evidence Alan had gathered proved devastating. Millions of dollars diverted, donors defrauded, Lucas's name used to solicit contributions that ended up in offshore accounts. The media had a field day. Prominent family faces fraud charges. Charitable foundation actually charity fraud. Cunningham's empire crumbles. Ryan watched it from a distance, protecting Lucas from the storm. The trial, the criminal trial, was swift and brutal. The Cunninghams' legal team tried every trick, but the paper trail was irrefutable. In June, the jury delivered guilty verdicts on all counts. Samuel received 8 years for fraud and tax evasion. Marcia, deemed less culpable, got 4 years plus restitution. Dan, who'd been listed as the foundation's treasurer but claimed ignorance, received 2 years in community service. Ryan didn't attend sentencing. He'd already given his victim impact statement, brief and devastating. They tried to steal my son by claiming money mattered more than love. Instead, they've lost everything, including the grandson they claimed to cherish. That's justice. Through it all, Lucas adjusted with the resilience of childhood. He asked about his grandparents occasionally. Why can't I see them anymore? And Ryan answered honestly, but simply, they did some bad things and have to make up for it. Lucas seemed to accept this with 5-year-old logic and moved on to more important questions, like whether dragons could be pets and why pizza couldn't be dinner every night. Ryan's life transformed in other ways too. The publicity around the case, while uncomfortable, led to unexpected opportunities. A feature in the Times about the architect who defeated Manhattan elite brought new clients. His firm promoted him to project lead on a major development. Money was no longer a constant source of anxiety. He moved to a better apartment, not extravagant, but with room for Lucas to run and windows that didn't face a dumpster. He hired a part-time nanny, a warm woman named Ruby Plummer who Lucas adored, so he could attend parent-teacher conferences and school plays without panic. One evening in late summer, as Ryan tucked Lucas into bed in his new room, his son looked up at him with Cecilia's green eyes. "Daddy, are we rich now?" Ryan smiled. "We're comfortable." "What?" "Tommy at school says his grandparents are rich and they have a pool. Can we get a pool?" "Maybe someday. How about we start with a kiddie pool on the balcony?" Lucas's face lit up. "Really? With floaties?" "With floaties." As Lucas drifted to sleep, Ryan sat in the darkened room, watching his son's chest rise and fall. He thought about the moment in the courtroom when he'd watched the Cunninghams' carefully constructed facade shatter, about Samuel's rage and Marcia's tears and the satisfying click of handcuffs. He should feel guilty about the extent of their punishment. But whenever that guilt flickered, he remembered Marcia's sneer in his apartment, Samuel's threats, the way they'd invaded his home and tried to steal his son. They'd gambled everything on the belief that money and power could crush a working-class single father. And they'd lost. There was poetry in that. 18 months after the trial, Ryan received a letter. The return address was a federal prison in Pennsylvania. He stared at it for a long time before opening it. "Ryan, I don't expect you to read this. I don't expect forgiveness. But I need to write it anyway. I failed Cecilia. I spent her entire life trying to mold her into something she wasn't. And when she chose her own path, I pushed her away. I never told her how proud I was when she stood up to me. I never told her that watching her build a life with you, a real life, based on love instead of appearances, made me realize everything I'd gotten wrong. When she died, I thought I could fix my mistakes through Lucas. I could give him everything I'd given Cecilia, do it better this time. I never understood that what he needed wasn't money or opportunity. He needed what Cecilia found with you. Genuine love and acceptance. The foundation fraud started small. A few thousand moved here and there for tax purposes. Then it grew, became a habit, a game. I told myself I was protecting family assets, securing Lucas's future. But the truth is I was feeding my own ego, my belief that I was above scrutiny. You were right to fight me. You were right to trap me. And God help me. I'm grateful you did. Because if you hadn't, I would have destroyed Lucas the way I destroyed my relationship with Cecilia. I'm an old man now, Ryan. I'll likely die in here. But I need you to know, Lucas is better off with you. He always was. I just couldn't see it through my own arrogance. Tell Lucas, when he's old enough to understand, that his grandfather loved him. But sometimes love isn't enough when it's mixed with the need to control. Sincerely, Samuel Cunningham. Ryan folded the letter carefully, slid it back into the envelope. He'd save it, maybe. Give it to Lucas someday when he was older, let him decide what to do with it. For now, he filed it away and went to find his son. Lucas was in the living room, building an elaborate city from blocks, narrating an epic battle between dinosaurs and robots. Ryan settled on the floor beside him, accepting the purple dinosaur Lucas handed him. "You're the hero, Daddy. You have to save the city." "I'll do my best, buddy." They played until dinner, Ryan's dinosaur valiantly defending the block city, while Lucas's robots launched increasingly creative attacks. When Ruby called them to the table, Lucas reluctantly abandoned his game. Over spaghetti, Lucas's current favorite, Ryan asked about school, about friends, about the new math concepts Lucas was learning. His son chattered happily, sauce on his chin, utterly secure in his world. This was what the Cunninghams never understood. This moment, ordinary and perfect, worth more than all their money and status combined. After dinner, Ryan supervised bath time and read 3 chapters of Harry Potter. As Lucas drowsed off, clutching his worn elephant, Ryan whispered the words he said every night. "I love you, buddy. Forever and always." "Love you too, Daddy." Ryan went to the balcony, looking out over the city lights. Somewhere in Pennsylvania, Samuel Cunningham was probably looking at similar lights through prison bars. Somewhere in a different facility, Marcia was lying on a narrow bunk, her pearls and pretensions stripped away. Dan was maybe serving his community service, sweeping streets, or sorting donations, learning that consequences were real. Ryan felt no triumph in their suffering, just satisfaction. They tried to take everything from him, and instead lost everything themselves. The scales balanced, justice served. His phone buzzed. A text from Jonathan Cameron. Saw the Cunningham case officially closed today. How are you holding up? Ryan typed back. Good. Really good. Thank you for everything. You did the hard part. I just showed you the battlefield. Still, couldn't have done it without you. Buy me a drink sometime. We'll call it even. Ryan smiled. He owed Cameron more than drinks, more than money. He owed him Lucas's laughter, his own peace of mind, the future they'd almost lost. Another text came through, this time from Alan. Drinks Friday? I want to hear about Lucas's dinosaur face. Friday works. 7 p.m. Perfect. Bring pictures. Ryan went back inside, closing the balcony door against the night chill. The apartment was quiet except for the white noise machine in Lucas's room. His own bedroom was modest but comfortable, the walls covered with photos. Lucas at the zoo, Lucas's first day of school, Lucas and Ryan building a snowman last winter. No photos of the Cunninghams. Ryan had packed those away, not destroyed but removed. Maybe someday Lucas would want them. Maybe he'd ask about his grandparents and Ryan would tell him the whole story, the good parts and the bad, the love that curdled into control, the mistakes that compounded into crimes. But not yet. For now, Lucas was 5 and the world was simple. Daddy loved him, and that was enough. Ryan changed into sweats and settled on the couch with his laptop, reviewing designs for the new downtown library project. Work was challenging in the best way, stretching his skills without consuming his life. He'd learned the balance between ambition and presence, between providing and being present. Around midnight, he closed the laptop and did a final check on Lucas. His son had kicked off the covers and somehow rotated 90 degrees. Ryan gently repositioned him, replaced the covers, kissed his forehead. In sleep, Lucas looked exactly like Cecilia. It didn't hurt the way it used to. Now it was just sweet. A reminder of her legacy, the best parts of her living on in their son. We did it, Ryan whispered to her memory. He's safe. He's loved, just like you wanted. In the silence, he could almost hear her laugh, that wild, joyful sound that had first made him fall in love with her. Could almost feel her approval. Ryan returned to his own room, climbed into bed, and slept without nightmares for the first time in 2 years. 3 years later, on Lucas's 9th birthday, Ryan threw a party at their apartment. The space was full of children, streamers, and controlled chaos. Ruby supervised the kids with cheerful efficiency while Alan manned the grill on the balcony, producing hot dogs and hamburgers with surprising skill. Jonathan Cameron arrived late, carrying an absurdly large gift that turned out to be a telescope. A telescope? Ryan raised an eyebrow. He's 9. He told me last month he wants to be an astronaut, or a paleontologist, or possibly a professional ice cream taster. Cameron grinned. The telescope covers at least one of those. Lucas, opening presents in a whirlwind of wrapping paper, squealed when he saw it. Mr. Cameron, this is so cool. Can we use it tonight? If your dad says it's okay. Ryan nodded, unable to keep from smiling. Sure, buddy. The party continued into evening, kids eventually claimed by parents, until only Alan, Cameron, and Ruby remained, helping clean up while Lucas played with his new toys. You've built a good life here, Cameron said, bagging empty cups. Lucas is thriving. Thanks to you. Thanks to you not giving up. I just provided the strategy. Alan emerged from the kitchen. I provided the dirt. Where's my credit? You're a hero, Alan. We'll build you a statue. Ryan threw a crumpled napkin at him. They cleaned and joked, and eventually settled on the balcony with beers while Ruby read to Lucas inside. The city spread below them, lights beginning to sparkle as dusk deepened. Ever hear from the Cunninghams? Alan asked. Ryan shook his head. Marcia got out 6 months ago. She moved to Florida, from what I understand. Samuel has another 3 years. Dan finished his sentence and apparently works for some tech startup now. Think they'll ever try to contact Lucas? Maybe. When he's older, if he wants to meet them, I won't stop him. But it'll be his choice, not theirs. Cameron raised his beer. To choices. And to good fathers who fight for their kids. They clinked bottles, drinking as the sun set, and the city transitioned from day to night. Inside, Lucas's laughter rang out at something Ruby had read. This was the victory, Ryan thought. Not the courtroom triumph or the Cunningham's imprisonment. This Lucas safe and happy, surrounded by people who loved him without conditions or control. Friends who'd stood by him through the worst of it. A life rebuilt from ashes into something solid and good. The war was over. They'd won. And the spoils were every ordinary, precious moment that followed. Later, after everyone had left and Lucas was asleep, Ryan stood in his son's doorway watching him dream. The telescope sat by the window, waiting for tomorrow's adventures. The worn elephant was clutched in one arm, a new robot toy in the other. Ryan's phone chimed. An email from an unknown address. He almost deleted it, then saw the subject line, about Cecilia. Curiosity won. He opened it. Mr. Black, you don't know me. My name is Allison Blanchard. We met briefly during your trial. I was Cecilia's college roommate. I've been meaning to reach out for years, but didn't know if I should interfere. But I found something recently that I think you and Lucas should have. Cecilia kept a journal. She started it in college and wrote in it sporadically throughout her life. The entries stop about 3 months before she died. She left it at my apartment the last time we had coffee together. We were meeting weekly toward the end, rekindling our friendship. There are entries about you, about Lucas, about her hopes and fears. I think she'd want him to have it someday. To know how much she loved you both, how fiercely she fought to build the life she wanted. There are also entries about her parents, about the abuse she endured growing up, emotional and psychological, if not physical, about why she cut contact, why she was so afraid to let them back into Lucas's life. If you want it, I'll send it. If it's too painful, I understand. But I thought you should know it exists. With respect, Allison. Ryan stared at the email for a long time. A journal. Cecilia's private thoughts, preserved beyond death. Evidence of the abuse Allison had hinted at during the trial, but never fully described. He typed a response. Thank you for reaching out. Yes, please send the journal. Lucas deserves to know his mother's story. And so do I. He hit send and closed his phone. Tomorrow would bring new revelations, new understanding of the woman he'd loved and lost. Tomorrow he'd read Cecilia's words and maybe find closure he didn't know he needed. But tonight, he just stood watching their son sleep, grateful beyond measure for the life they'd built together and the future he'd fought so hard to protect. The Cunninghams had tried to write the ending to this story. They tried to make it about power and money and control. Instead, Ryan had written his own ending, and it was perfect. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.